Who are the running backs you need to count on in week 5 in the FFPC? How do you navigate a cavalcade of wide receiver injuries for the remainder of the season and this week in October? And what is the best way to win a $1 million grand prize in the FFPC Main Event and the FFPC Big Gorilla? We've got a great show for you tonight. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts right now.
I can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than these lessons.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome in to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. MyFFPC.com is where to go. MyFFPC.com. Hi, hello, and welcome. My name is Eric Balkman. You know me from the High Stakes Fantasy Lowdown, the RotoViz High Stakes Fantasy Lowdown, rotoviz.com/podcast, of course, the Better Sports Network's FFPC Insider Access show, where you can watch at the Better Sports Network and FFPC socials at FFPC Better Sports Network, Facebook, Twitter, X, YouTube, all of them, Thursday nights at 7 o'clock. So glad to have you aboard here on this Friday night leading up into a banner week 5 in the FFPC and fantasy football around the NFL as well. At Eric Balkman on the X is where to follow me. You can follow this guy on the X at jferrellelliott. Of course, check out all of his great contests over at the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, KFFSC.com. Please welcome in the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, one J. Ferrell Elliott. Ferrell, welcome in tonight, man. So glad to have you aboard. Happy October to you.
Good evening, Balky. But we began October in a pale of shadow across your very most handsome face. That's a little better. That's a little better. You know, we need, you know, you're a man that deserves to be in the spotlight, Balky. No shadows for you, sir. But wasn't that an exciting game last night to get this week started?
I was, you know, I'm busy. I'm a busy guy. Yeah. And my plan last night was I'm like, okay, I'm going to hang out. I'm going to watch because I was on live with the FFPC Insider Access show until about 9 o'clock Eastern time last night. And then I was free. It's just to watch the remainder of the first half and then the second half. And I was like, okay, this is it. You know, as soon as the game's over, I'm going to go to bed. No. We went to overtime last night with the Niners and Rams, which I did not see happening because for the Niners, Ferrell, last night, no George Kittle, no Brandon Ayuk, no Ricky Pearsall, no Juwan Jennings, and no Brock Purdy. And yet they took the Rams to overtime, and God, what a game it was.
At the Rams field, you know, in the Rams home.
I don't, you know, it's one of those things where it's like my market manager for my local sports radio show this morning, he comes on every for my final segment for a paid sponsorship at the end of every show. And he told me today, he's like, just when you think you have the NFL figured out, they throw this curveball at you where Mac Jones throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns with all the pass catchers I mentioned earlier not playing in the game. Matthew Stafford blows up last night. Puka Nacua has a great night. Devontae Adams shows out. Kyron Williams shows out. And yet the Rams lose this game. And Ferrell, I think the question we have to ask ourselves here for fantasy is, you know, George Kittle probably not coming back this week, but the week after, we could see Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall back this week. The Niners might be ready to make a run. And the Niners, as far as fantasy goes, we could be seeing big things for the second half of the fantasy season in the FFPC and the KFFSC, not only from McCaffrey and Pearsall, but from Jennings and Kittle and Purdy as well.
If McCaffrey gets cut loose with some running, if he can start having those big chunk rushes that he's famous for in the past, watch out for McCaffrey. He's already the number one receiver. I think it's a tip of the cap goes to that front office and the team they put together. I can remember when Jawan Jennings moved into the starting lineup, and we all questioned, well, that's just going to be a problem. And Jennings was excellent. And it's a situation where this team is built from the first man to the 53rd man. And at quarterback, if we go back down memory lane, we'll remember that this team had Mac Jones as one of their primary targets in that draft. So you put all that together, and they've assembled the kind of team that they want. They coach them up. They coach them on a short week. They take them on the road, and they use their second string to beat a team that many think is going to win the division. But, hey, they're a game behind now.
If you look at the 49ers schedule going forward, Ferrell, obviously they have the mini bye right now. They go to Tampa next week, and we'll see what happens there. There's certainly a chance that Mike Evans could be back for that game, and obviously Chris Godwin and Mecca Gupta. Then they get the Falcons at home. They go to Houston. They go to New York. They get the Rams at home, a rematch, and then they go to Arizona after the Arizona game. That is on where is it? Right here. I just had it. The Arizona game's November 16th. They get Carolina at home. They go to Cleveland. They have the Tennessee Titans at home. They go to Indianapolis. They have the Bears at home, and then the Seahawks at home. I'm not saying that the Niners have like a 13-win season here, but my God, Ferrell, this schedule for the Niners is shaping up really well, not only for San Francisco fans, but for owners of Pearsall, McCaffrey, Kittle, Jennings, and the like going forward here.
And it's not a cakewalk, but some of those names of teams that we went through there, you can foresee McCaffrey doing just what I asked him to do, gain a lot of yards rushing the ball.
I think when we look back on this season, and I was saying this back in mid-August, based on how I drafted, and it's not like I drafted McCaffrey in every single league, Ferrell, but I'm like, I think when we look back on this year, the way it's shaping up right now, we're going to be like, God, why didn't I get McCaffrey in the middle of the first round, the end of the first round, and more drafts? Why did I ignore him? The fact that he is getting so much run right now, both in the rushing game and the passing game, has to have high stakes players in the KFFSC and the FFPC kicking themselves right now if they didn't draft him, because he looks like he is ready to go and he is ready to contribute over the course of not just 1 month, but 4+ months, trying to win you a grand prize in the KFFSC and the FFPC. He looks great right now, man.
That was the first thing we tipped our cap to after week 1, to all the owners that stepped up and chose McCaffrey. And you can get him late in the first round, at least when I was in Las Vegas. And it took some guts to step up and get him, based on history. And, if anyone had been told what the first round would look like, the round of walking wounded, McCaffrey would have won in the first 3 or 4 spots. But you know what? He's a fantastic player. And, to those who take the risk comes the big reward. And he's such a thrill to watch. And you knew that team with him on the field was never out of it, despite the health of the quarterback. And yeah, it's just was a great example of what football was about. And we've had, Thursday night games for a season or so where we would come on and it would be a very ho-hum affair. Offensive coordinators would dumb down the playbook, defense would rule the day, and we're not seeing that this year. And I'm happy about the matchups. It's good football.
Yeah, I am too. It's very exciting to see. I want to keep things in the NFC South. From the Niners to the Carolina Panthers, we go, Ferrell. The Carolina Panthers have ruled out Chuba Hubbard with a calf injury for Week 5. against the Miami Dolphins. Adam Schefter reporting this just a few hours ago. Hubbard was expected to miss week 5, and then Adam Schefter confirmed it from the Carolina Panthers sources. This is a massive miss for Hubbard because he was expected to do a lot of numbers against the Miami Dolphins this week. It doesn't sound like this is a long-term thing for Hubbard. However, when you consider the fact that they have Rico Dowdle, that they have the rookie Trevor Etienne behind them, this is something that we need to unpack for fantasy lineups in week 5. Rico Dowdle, to me, like I picked him up in my not that I want to keep bringing this up, but in my son's league that I helped run for him, I picked him up yesterday morning when it was looking like it was not going to be great for Hubbard and we are in dire need of running back help. I am of the opinion that Rico Dowdle can fulfill a back-end RB2 role for many FFPC and KFFSC players this week. Trevor Etienne, I think, is fine if you want to roster him. I would not be starting him this week. I think he is a desperation flex, and hopefully week 5 does not mean desperation for you right now, but roster him. Ferrell, I like Dowdle this week, though. I think he gets 65-70% of the touches in this backfield, and to me, that makes sense for people who are trying to fulfill gaps in their lineup for no Josh Jacobs, who is on a bye, no Bijan Robinson, who is on a bye, DeAndre Swift, who is on a bye, Jalen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell. The list goes on and on. All these players that are on a bye, you can kind of fulfill this spot with Rico Dowdle this week. I don't know if he could still be available for a pickup in the KFFSC and the FFPC this week, but if you do have him on your roster already, he is a very intriguing piece in week 5 starting lineups.
If Rico Dowdle is available, somebody's been asleep at the switch or somebody made a mistake, had him on their roster and let him go. You know, Balky, you said everything but the magic word. He's playing the Miami Dolphins 30th in rush defense this year, 30th in rush defense. I think Rico, our refugee from the Dallas Cowboys, our 1,000-yard potential rusher, gets a big, big game. 20 fantasy points for Rico Dowdle this weekend.
20 is aggressive.
No, this one's going to get.
I'm not going to argue with you, Ferrell. You have been what was the thing we were talking about this off air a few hours ago? What was the Niner that you played?
I had Jake in the lineup. I own him on 11 teams, and I had him play on 4.
So Jake Tongas, excuse me, who was in the game against the against the Rams last night, in place of George Kittle. How many targets did he get? Like 8 or 9 targets. He catches like 7 of them, and he gets.
I don't know, Balky. I was too busy counting those catches and touchdowns.
And one Ferrell Elliott keeps him in his FFPC lineups last night.
And I had to take some real guys out of the lineup to put him in.
Who did you take out in favor of Tongas?
Aluminor, Myers from the Raiders.
This is ballsy, Ferrell.
Yeah, and Zach Ertz, 3 that I had.
Rubio.
One I had to play him because there was no choice.
I get it.
But I wasn't ballsy enough to sit Bowers and put him in for Bowers. So.
Rubio from the West Coast hanging out with us tonight. He had Kendrick Bourne going for him last night. 25 points. Nothing wrong with that.
Rubio is the only player in fantasy football that had Kendrick Bourne. And if anyone else accidentally had him, they didn't start him.
I'm gonna say this right now, Ferrell. My good friend, Is It the Welsh on X, Chris Welsh from Fantasy Pros, was forced to play Kendrick Bourne in the league last night as well. So he is, and I'm gonna say this, mea culpa, because I know there's a lot of people watching this show tonight who watched the FFPC Insider Access show last night with myself and Dynasty League Football's John Arrington. And when we were doing our preview of the Niners-Rams game on Thursday night, I asked John, I said, listen, man, if there is one Niners receiver you are starting tonight with no Ayuk, no Pearsall, no Jennings, who's it going to be? And he said unequivocally, and I agreed with him, one Demarcus Robinson. He did not do anything close to what Kendrick Bourne did last night. So that was a miss on our part, and I'll fully admit it. But Bourne was the man. Ferrell, I'm going to pose this to you right now. I'll let my thoughts be known after you say this. He's not, I mean, with the mini bye coming up for the Niners, with a chance for Pearsall and Jennings and Kittle potentially to get healthy, Bourne is not a guy I'm looking at to start in week 6. Are you looking at him as a potential start in week 6?
No. He did exactly what he needed to do. He's
with all those players out.
Yeah, he's a complimentary. Now he had some problems dropping the ball last week, and he dropped a couple in this game. But tip of the cap to and one of our listeners, I guess, is Rubio, pointed out a fact that the quarterback and the receiver had great chemistry from their time together with the Patriots, and that was good analysis and a reason enough to put him in the lineup. Jimmy Williams gives his testimony, indicting himself that he had D-Rob in the bench. No, but it goes forward to prove that if you think that Jennings continues to be hobbled, if you have multiple 49er receivers, maybe you have Pearsall and Jennings on the roster, or any combination there, Bourne would be an excellent guy to carry because they know they can turn to him. Now, I don't think they're going to look to fit him in the lineup, but they could turn to him and he can perform.
Two things on this with Bourne. He's a pro's pro. Obviously, the quarterbacks like throwing to him, the coaches and the offensive coordinator like scheming things up for Bourne. But Ferrell, I don't know if you noticed this last night. I was watching that game. God, it seemed like Bourne bobbled every single catch last night. He never caught anything clean, which was so irritating to see.
So James Bednar, a beloved player of the FFPC, the KFFSC, Bednar is a diehard Patriots fan, and he never could understand why Bourne didn't do more. He couldn't understand why he wasn't drafted more often, targeted more often. And that has to do with the fact that he's a body catcher, but he's a big body that knows how to get open. And, so yeah, what a good thing that we're 4 weeks in and we can talk about Bourne. That's what's so great about it.
It is great. Permar is saying this right now, and I'm not going to disagree with him on this, that Bourne is not a pickup. All that was schemed by Kyle Shanahan, which could be the truth. And even if it's not the truth, if Pearsall and Jennings and Kittle are healthy next week, going to be tough for me to find a spot in my starting lineup for Kendrick Lamar.
What does he mean he's not a pickup? What does he mean by that?
He's not a pickup for week 6.
Ferrell. Not a pickup. Yeah, well, we just gave it a situation where he could be a pickup because we play with 20-man rosters here in the FFPC. And if you've got a 20-man roster, you've got 4 guys that are banged up that aren't going to play. So,
and I'll just say this right now, as far as everything goes for week 6, we have 4 teams on bye this week, so it's difficult for people to pick up players on Sunday morning. And then next week we have no Texans, we have no Vikings, which means no Woody Marks next week, no Stroud, no Dalton Schultz, defense. Yep, none of these guys are going to be available. No Jordan Addison, no Justin Jefferson, no TJ Hawkinson, no Jordan Mason, no Vikings defense. So you are running into a problem if you want to acquire players like Kendrick Bourne on your roster.
So is the NFL, and it's not the trade deadline yet. Maybe
I'm just saying
he finds a new home.
Yeah, listen, it might work for some teams. It may not work for all teams as far as Kendrick Bourne on rosters for next week. We have our good buddy Jason Coe coming up in just a little bit here, ladies and gentlemen. He is the week 3 5th place team owner in the FFPC Big Gorilla contest that pays out a $1 million grand prize. Before we get to Jason, I do want to answer one or two more, probably 2 more questions in the YouTube chat that came up here tonight. I'm trying to scroll through right now. Bear with me as I'm trying to find. Okay, here we go. Corey Walters. Question 1. Are you guys worried about Lamar Jackson after he comes back? Wondering if I can trade for him. Ferrell, before you answer this, I am totally of the opinion, trade for Lamar Jackson. I did not envision this Baltimore Ravens defense being this bad. I do believe that Lamar Jackson will not play in week 5 and probably not in week 6, but week 7 and on, I think there's a very strong possibility he plays. So if you can stomach the next 2 weeks without Jackson on your team, with perhaps a better quarterback in tow, then yes, I think you trade for Jackson. I am a big fan of him in the second half of the season. based on that the Ravens seemingly can't stop anybody right now, Ferrell.
Anyone who's trading Lamar Jackson is obviously contemplating a retirement from fantasy football.
Which could be true. 100%. Team Porkies, according to James Hicks. And by the way, I'm going to do this right now. Sorry for my camera angle here.
Hey, look at Team Porkies.
Team Porkies started Kendrick Bourne last night, and Oinker has 3 oinks to say to that. Yeah, and as well as the Ferrell Oinker. There we go. They're going crazy for Kendrick Bourne being in starting lineups last night for Team Porkies, which is great. KJ Hockey chiming in that they started Jake Tonjes over Tucker Kraft and George Kittle last night, which, I mean, you were probably forced to do that to a certain extent. Tucker Kraft's on bye and George Kittle's hurt. But Jake Tonjes, 8 targets or whatever it was and 7 catches. Congratulations. That is fantastic stuff for you last night as well. Okay, Adam Hahn chiming in, the voice of reason on the show. It was Kendrick Bourne's birthday gift to his mother last night. He does nothing again rest of season. Adam, you certainly could be right 100% on that.
Adam, if you're not, we're going to call you out.
Yeah, we will. And he will welcome that, and he will explain away why he was wrong on that, and it's probably going to be a good explanation.
Okay. Why don't you throw up his not worried about Lamar, very concerned about the Ravens, because that's genius.
Yeah, well, and I'll say this.
That's just damn genius right there.
I mean, I would be concerned about the Ravens as a team from an NFL standpoint. I'm not concerned about Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, Zay Flowers, so on and so forth.
You should get concerned about Flowers.
I'm going to say this right now, Ferrell. God, who was saying this the other day? Somebody I think it was on the Fantasy Points podcast, and they said, think about, maybe it wasn't Fantasy Points. It all runs together, and I apologize.
Yes, it does.
They were saying at the start of the season, this might have been Alfredo Brown from Football Guys. At the start of the season, they wanted to draft whoever it was. They wanted to draft Lamar Jackson as like a top 3 quarterback, top 4 quarterback. And they're like, this is great. Lamar Jackson's going to put up video game numbers. But they stopped short of doing it because the reaction was, as good as that defense is going to be, Jackson's not going to have to run. He's not going to have to throw. It's going to be Derrick Henry. It's going to be Justice Hill. It's going to be Keaton Mitchell. And so they shied away from drafting Lamar Jackson. And now what we have seen from this defense in Baltimore, it's like, dude, if you have Lamar Jackson at this point, you are sitting pretty as long as you can handle the 1, 2, 3 week, whatever it is, absence with the injury right now. Because when he gets back, this defense is in no spot to stop anybody, and Lamar Jackson is going to be in the perfect spot to go crazy on everybody with his runs and his passes right now. I'm not saying it's going to be an MVP year for Lamar Jackson, but fantasy-wise, Ferrell, he's going to do numbers when he gets back.
After watching every game Lamar played in college and the success he had, and watching how his body's changed as he's moved through as a professional, I've still been holding my breath for all these years, the style of play, expecting him to get hurt and expecting him to miss time. I'm surprised that in the NFL game, it's been this long since he's missed some time. And I hope he doesn't rush it back. It's going to be interesting to see what comes with Cooper Rush. I always thought that was maybe an odd pickup or an odd pairing, but can't be any worse than what's happening at Cincinnati, which is the strangest result that I expected from that quarterback. So until we see these guys play in regular season, it's hard to say what. I do have some concern about Flowers. That's my biggest concern.
Yeah, I think there's some concern for me there as well. I'm not overly concerned, but yes, I think that we have to be monitoring that situation, and we will going forward. To help us monitor that situation and everything going on in the FFPC and high stakes fantasy football is our guest tonight. He is woefully overdue. I'm going to bring him on right now. He flirted with the overall lead in the Fantasy Football Players Championship Big Gorilla Tournament just 2 weeks ago, where he was sitting at 5th place overall. He's got a lot of pokers in the fire, a lot of chances to win that $1 million grand prize in the FFPC Big Gorilla. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome in our guest tonight, the one, the only, the Jason Coe. Jason, thank you so much for hopping aboard tonight. Good evening to you. How's it going on this first Friday in October, man?
Man, it's awesome. Thanks for having me. Really excited to talk to you guys tonight. Just going over these lineups and trying to get everything straight for the weekend after a lot of injury chaos in the last week and a half. I think everybody's experiencing it, but a few of my teams certainly took the brunt of a couple of those big, especially the wide receiver injuries last week with Malik Neighbors, and I got a lot of Tyreek Hill out there. But hopefully you've drafted well and can find some people to plug into those holes as quickly as possible, and find those good waiver pickups. So that's kind of what we've been focusing on the past day and a half, I guess.
I brought this up on the FFPC Insider Access show last night, and not that anybody wants to hear about my Scott Fishbowl team, but I'll bring this up right now. I lost CeeDee Lamb. I lost Malik Neighbors. I lost Tyreek Hill. And for those of you who are still keeping score, Calvin Ridley was on that team as well. So I am in a really bad spot trying to cobble together a lineup in that league. But I think this is, nobody wants to admit this, Jason, and maybe you won't admit it on the show tonight, and maybe you don't believe it, and that's cool too. But I feel like people who play in the Big Gorilla, people who play in the FFPC Main Event, they want to win the $1 million, but sometimes I think another aspect that makes it fun is the challenge of trying to replace these guys in your lineup and on your roster. The challenge of digging deep and trying to figure out okay, can I get an Alec Iamaner off the waiver wire? Did I draft deep enough where I can get these, Quinshon Judkins pieces that were undervalued in the Big Gorilla and the FFPC Main Event? Because if you have those pieces, the Neighbors hit, the Lamb hit, the Tyreek Hill hit, they hit a little bit less. And I feel like, you don't necessarily want to be in the situation where you have to replace those guys. But part of the fun, part of the challenge is trying to do it. And I think that, October 3rd, 2025, Jason, there's still ample time to do that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, for me, it's when I've had some of those deeper teams, one of the fun things for me is always to try to find that guy that's sitting out there. I remember when I had years and years ago was Justin Forsett, the year he broke out with the Ravens. Picked him up for a really small amount in week 1 or 2 or something like that, and ended up taking me to a pretty sizable championship on another platform. But so I love looking for those little guys, and I listen to a lot of the experts that are out there telling you who you should be looking at, who might be coming up. But this week it was watching these guys go down. So you start looking at who you already have picked up, and you're like, where's the next spot that you can get to from there? So, we would all love to have that perfect team that just starts out hot and goes all the way, but searching for those diamonds in the rough as the season goes on, it is part of the fun and part of the challenge. And then you get to tell that story somewhere down the road about how I picked up this guy in week 6 and he catapulted me, even though I lost, But the big one I was, in this league, I think was Malik this week, who I was, and I also have Lamar Jackson in the league that I think we're discussing too. Backed him up with Jordan Love, but it just happens to be his bye week, the week that Lamar gets hurt. So, thought I did a good job there, but so now we're seeing what we can pivot to and insert there. But yeah, it is part of the fun of the game. But
run Dylan Gabriel out there and see what happens.
No, don't do that. Do not
run no Dylan out there.
I think I got Jackson Dart going in this one, and a couple of weeks ago I picked him up for $1 in probably at least 50% of my leagues, if not maybe 70% of my leagues. Just with as you're watching Russell Wilson crash back to probably retirement pretty soon. It was, this guy's going to get a chance. He's got some talent. See it. So I'm glad I have him there. I have him in a couple other leagues, and we'll see if he's one of those guys that turns into what Jaden Daniels was or something close to that from last year. And getting him for $1, like I said, in most of those leagues, I feel like that's a big victory there.
Yeah.
Made great story. I ended up with Mac Hollins once and had to start him, and it was 40 points later. And I just, for 1 week, I felt like a wonder. I was quickly denied later on. But, flip the idea about injured players, and sometimes you just have to have patience. That's been exhibited down in Tampa this year with Godwin, but I don't think any more anticipation of a player doing well could be had other than Worthy at Kansas City. The shoulder's still bad. That friendly fire run in he had with Kelsey, but he was full go at practice right now. And this is a player to me that, when you talk about Neighbors walking off the stage, Worthy walks on, and I see some of the same kind of statistical production. Your thoughts on Worthy, and is he the kind of player that can join the team a quarter of the way in and then take that team to the championship?
Love Xavier Worthy. Have a fair amount of shares of him this year. I have him in a guillotine league and was able to escape those first few weeks and got him back last week, which was awesome. I was a little worried in that one. I drafted him a lot early this year. I didn't draft him in my later drafts because his, stock started to go up, especially when Rashi had his suspension come down. So I thought he was, being overvalued when people started taking him in the 3rd and 4th round. So I didn't get as much of him late, but I love him. I think he's got that Tyreek Hill kind of potential when he was in Kansas City, where he's a 60 or 70-yard touchdown waiting to happen. Of course, he's a smaller built guy, and you have to worry about injuries all the time. I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh, and I'm not a Steelers fan, but one of my favorite quotes that Mike Tomlin has is, you can't live in your fears. So you put these guys in your lineup, and that, you kind of have to trust him that Patrick's going to find him. He's going to take some deep shots with him. So he may have some of those 7 or 8 point weeks, I guess, but I think he's 2 catches away from having a 30-point week every now and then. So
I don't think he does, but if he does, this might be the weekend. The Jacksonville Jags defense, we talked about them a little bit last week. I picked them up, played them. I think it was 16 points. They're a turnover creating machine. Now, I don't think they can cover Worthy, and you got a quarterback that can get the ball to Worthy.
Yeah.
So, but does that matchup perhaps play into your mind, or is it just Worthy in the lineup and go?
If in every league I have Worthy in, he's in the lineup this week.
Gotcha.
Especially after watching what happened last week. It just felt, and I think you take it back to the Super Bowl last year, those two just feel like they have something together. Now, when Rice comes back, maybe it diminishes a little bit, but I still think he's an every week starter for me. Unless I had that team with Neighbors, Lamb, Tyreek Hill, like Eric's talking about, then maybe you have a decision to make there. But I can't think of 15 receivers that I like better than Xavier Worthy right now. So I think he's an every week starter for me for sure.
Good job.
Listen, what you're saying, Jason, makes perfect sense to me. I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, and maybe it's an unfair way to do it. I had a buddy who played in fantasy. He still plays fantasy football leagues, but a couple of years ago, he had it was in a keeper league, and he had James Conner, and this is before he joined Arizona. This is when he was still with Pittsburgh, and he was so ticked off. We played in a Sunday night basketball league together, and it always seemed like the Steelers were playing Sunday night, and we would never be able to watch the game because we were playing basketball. And he would check his phone at halftime, and James Conner had left the game, and James Conner had separated his shoulder or hurt his ankle, and he's out for the game, and the replacement is in, and the backup is in, whatever. And he said, "Look, I will never draft James Conner anymore. I'm trading this guy off my team. I cannot stand starting this guy who has so much promise." All the pundits out there are saying this is a great start this week, and then he gets hurt halfway through the first quarter, and I get nothing. Xavier Worthy is playing with a shoulder harness right now. And obviously, he was very, very good in week 4. Came through for FFPC fantasy football players who started him. It was great. But going forward, and I don't know if this shoulder harness is going away anytime soon. Is there anything to be said about Worthy? Maybe not this week because there's no Rashee Rice. But when Rashee Rice comes back, is there anything to be said for like, hey, I don't want to mess around with this in-game injury with Xavier Worthy's shoulder, which is clearly not fully right. I'm going to bench him. Is there something to be said for that? Or is your advice to the high-stakes players out there, throw caution to the wind? This guy is the number 1 receiver for Kansas City right now. You need to get him in your lineups, and we'll see what happens. Let the chips fall where they may. How does Xavier Worthy's shoulder harness factor in to your start-sit decisions for all your lineups in the Big Gorilla going forward?
Sure. I guess it would be very dependent on who else I have that could, if I have one of those safe guys in those, if my team's doing well and I'm looking at that matchup and I have one of those safe guys that I'm like, this guy's a 6 for 60, or he's a running back that's going to get 10 carries and 4 catches that I can kind of count on for that 15-point-ish area, maybe. But most of the time I'm trying to score. I want as many points as I possibly can every week. You don't know what you're coming up against. You see it from week to week with you run into Kendrick Bourne, right? And you tried to play it safe because you're like, that guy's lineup's not that strong, and now you're kind of hurting there. So for me, it's most of the time I'm gonna shoot for the stars. But maybe if I have a Godwin and a I don't know, one of those other kind of possession receivers that a Stephon Diggs, something like that, and you cobble those together and say, I don't love Worthy's matchup and wait till he's healthy, but. In most of the leagues that I have him in, he's one of my top 3 receivers, so he's probably going to play.
Balky, if this was a deposition, I would have jumped in and said, asked and answered, sir. And see, because you finally got to a scenario that would leave Worthy on the bench, and I give you credit for it. And Jason, you can recant that, Brother Coe, anytime you want.
Okay, Ferrell, you are right on that 100%. I do want, and this is, and to continue our deposition, our interrogation, our putting Jason Coe on the stand.
Better get that damn answer we want.
Well, no, yes, this is a leading question that I want to ask right now.
Oh, okay.
The Broncos' number 1 receiver is Courtland Sutton, and there are a lot of people of the belief that this week Sutton is going to be shut down because he is ostensibly, we think, going to be facing Quinyon Mitchell, who has allowed like 4 catches to opposing teams' number 1 receiver over the last 3 weeks. And it could be another bad game for Sutton here. Not another game, but I'm just saying it could be a bad game for Sutton. So as a result, for people who are trying to plug the holes in the dikes, like the little Danish boy in Amsterdam, with the water coming through with the bye weeks, how do we fix our lineups here? And maybe one of the ways we do it is with Troy Franklin, is with Marvin Mims, is with Evan Engram, is with, any of these Denver Broncos pass catchers that are not named Courtland Sutton. Jason, if you look at your squads, if you look at how you're facing week 5 here, and if you look at how you're facing the remainder of the season, really, is there a number 2 wide receiver for the Broncos that you like better than maybe some of the other options in Denver right now?
I don't know that I'm crazy about any of them. I think it could be a week-to-week thing there. I will tell you that I have an insane amount of Troy Franklin shares. I started drafting him. In the summertime, I do a lot of best ball leagues just to kind of scratch my itch and have some fun. And I was taking Troy Franklin left and right in deep in those drafts. And then I continued to take him a little bit in some of the, redraft leagues as well. I got a little scared off by him because everybody was talking Marvin Mims, and I never believed it because I know that college relationship that Franklin had with Bo Nix, and that kind of felt like a thing. So he's the guy I like the best. I do also have a lot of Evan Engram shares, and I'm highly disappointed in what I'm getting out of Evan Ingram so
Oh,
far.
yeah.
Still hopeful, but there was a lot of talk of, oh, he's the Jimmy Graham from New Orleans, and that's just not. I don't think he was ever going to be that, but I thought we would see a little bit more going towards him. So I believe in Troy Franklin, and Mims kind of reminds me of what you guys were saying about Xavier Worthy there, is that he just feels like a more injury-prone guy. He's a smaller guy. I can see him being that guy that misses more time and is questionable most weeks. Franklin's a little bit of a bigger guy, and I think in that number 2 spot, especially this week, like you were saying, he's facing, who's it, Adoree Jackson or whoever's on the other side of the field over there for Philly. Yeah, but on the other side of the field, right? Is it
Adoree or is it
I think it's Adoree Jackson, yeah, who's just host at this point in his career. And so does Troy Franklin get, 8 targets over there and go for 70 to 100 yards and maybe sneak a touchdown in there? So I have him starting, I think, in a couple of leagues. He's probably in my mid 20s this week or somewhere like that, maybe low 20s. But I think as the season goes on, he could be something. I took a lot of Denver offense this year, expecting really big things. RJ Harvey, I have a little bit of Dobbins, but I have a lot of Franklin. I have a lot of Ingram. I didn't take Sutton. I've never been a big Sutton fan, and he just goes a little earlier than I like, so I don't really have any of him. But if I'm picking a number 2 there, it's probably Troy Franklin.
And it's forthcoming. I like what's coming for you. When we were at the draft out at the Horseshoe and live drafting, and I was really surprised at how quickly Chris Godwin was going in the drafts. And it seems like he gained momentum through the drafts, through the weekend. He would seem to go a little higher. So I was very interested in watching his comeback. And what I noticed was the stat line was not impressive, but the targets were impressive. The way he ran was impressive. And listening to his coach talk about how this team is going to lean on him gives you every belief that this player is going to return to fantasy numbers that would support a real winning fantasy team. Your thoughts on Godwin?
I mean, he's that security blanket, right, that Baker Mayfield absolutely loves. I think there's still some concern. For me, I think I'm like 50-50. Have him started in a few leagues, have him still on the bench in some. I think he falls in that, I have Olave in some leagues.
Yeah.
It's like Olave has a pretty good matchup this week with the Giants, so it's like.
And another target monster.
Right. Well, which one of those do you go with? So those are the kind of decisions I think, like Marvin Harrison, those kind of guys. I'm like, I could make the argument either way. In the leagues that I drafted Godwin in, I took him a lot later this year, like late into the fall, when he was going deeper in drafts because the news was already out that he was missing at least 4 weeks. I couldn't understand people taking him in like that 4th, 5th, 6th round earlier in the year because I'm like, he's not coming back. So most of the leagues, I think when I did get him, it was 7, 8, 9 kind of time. So he was clearly a bench player for me that I was willing to take a shot on, that if I'm pretty solid at wide receiver, he could fill in there. And that's kind of what's coming true with him. So I think he'll start in some leagues for me this week, but he's a guy that I see probably the same way I see Franklin, is like in a week, 2, 3 weeks, maybe he's a very consistent start for me.
He's a guy that I wish I had rostered somewhere.
Yes.
Just somewhere.
Yeah.
So when you talk about consistently, I mean, like obviously rostering, yes, you're going to do it. But in regards to Godwin, when like Evans is out this week, he could be back in week 6, probably for sure back in week 7. Assuming Egbuka is healthy, this is a weird thing to deal with. I mean, obviously it's a good thing for Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in general. And maybe this is a better question to ask you once everybody's healthy. But when Godwin, Evans, and Egbuka are all healthy, are they all starts? And you just kind of rein back your expectations on them? I certainly don't want to sit any of them.
No,
but
with Baker Mayfield sure the hell is.
Listen, I've been wrong about Mayfield this year. I thought he was going to take a step back.
Yeah.
This guy, as to quote Seinfeld, Baker Mayfield has the Kavorka. That guy whatever he is facing, he is going to make a game of it. He is going to put up numbers. He is going to, if he doesn't win the game, he's going to make it damn sure that his Buccaneers team is going to be close to winning the game. So mea culpa on Baker Mayfield, because that guy's been great this year. But when it comes down to it, and Jason, this is what I'm going to pose to you. When Evans, Godwin, and Ibuka are all healthy, I mean, obviously this is a situation that we don't have to deal with for at least another week or so. But I don't know what to do. I mean, I don't have any of them on the same team. Like, I have them all on separate teams.
Yeah.
But if they are all healthy at the same time, I wonder, do I just throw caution to the wind and say, yeah, Evans, Godwin, Ibuka, they're all healthy? Yeah, they're all starting in my lineup, at least at a flex spot.
Right. Yeah, and Ibuka has surprised me. I knew there were big things ahead for him. I didn't know that he was going to start out as hot as he did. Amazing, right? And especially for the people that drafted him late in drafts are really winning there. I guess from a football standpoint, maybe Godwin benefits from those two guys being able to stretch the field a little bit more for him, and he starts to pick up those 7, 8, 9 catch games. I love him. I've been a big fader of Mike Evans the past few years, and I haven't been correct, but because he's always been so touchdown dependent, I don't have him on a single team this year. And 3 or 4 years ago, I had him on a bunch of teams, and I've just been kind of waiting for him to fall off. So I'm not an Evans guy. And like I said, I've been wrong and dead wrong for the past 3 years, but that's the guy that would scare me the most because he's so touchdown dependent. And does Ibuka now kind of become that bigger play guy down the field, and Godwin still gets all those targets? So I think it's very reasonable to start all three. I wouldn't do it if I had them all on the same team, obviously,
right.
But yeah, I feel the same way about Baker that you did. I've been waiting for this fairy tale to come to an end too, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Looks like he is here to stay, and they have complete trust in him to just throw it around the field. And so how can you not start his receivers every week, knowing that you have the potential of those big weeks?
Here's another tough one before we get to our David Montgomery portion of the program here tonight. Our good buddy Rubio has an interesting starter sit question here. He's got to sit I'm assuming he's got to sit one of these players. He's got to start 2 and sit the others. So his conundrum is this. He's got Quinshon Judkins, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time in London. Get your lineups in early. Would you start or sit him, Javonte Williams, who is at the New York Jets this week, or Rachaad White, who ostensibly should be the starting running back with no Bucky Irving in Tampa this week? Rachaad White is going across 3 time zones to play the Seahawks in Washington this week. Jason, you got to sit one of these guys. Who would you tell Rubio to sit?
I'd probably sit Judkins, and mostly because of the Gabriel factor. Is Minnesota going to be able to kind of load up against the run there and dare him to beat them? I mean, also a decimated wide receiver group there in Cleveland right now. I mean, maybe Isaiah Bond becomes something, who knows? But I have Rachaad White in some other leagues, and he's starting for me this week in most leagues. I think he gets some nice run. In Seattle's one defensive weakness seems to be against the run. Mm-hmm. So I trust him there. And then can't you see that Dallas Jets game being 33-31 or something with, both teams just going up and down the field there? So yeah, probably Quinshon Judkins for me would be on the bench.
That's the only conclusion you can come to. When I was drafting Bucky Irving as much as I did this year, it never really occurred to me to handcuff him with White. And that's a product of poor thinking. And I think if I had spent my spring like you doing more best ball leagues, I would have been more familiar with the idea of White. And people forget he caught 50-plus balls last year. He caught 6 touchdowns. Whatever he does running the ball, the receiving game is an impressive bonus for him. And I really, really like what this player is going to do. And I think he does better as the guy rather than a complimentary guy. So I'm all in on White. But that's a good problem to have. That's a good team.
Sure.
Our friend Rubio has put together there.
And I agreed with Jason. I think Judkins is the sit there. We have seen Judkins be a potential league winner so far this year. But when you take out Joe Flacco and interject a rookie quarterback that was not drafted on day one, anything's possible. And so I would rather have that unknown on my bench this week when I have other solutions like Rachaad White and like Javonte Williams here. Speaking of running backs, Jason, let's talk about David Montgomery here. It was a massive clunker for him in week 4. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think it was something like 9 carries for like 12 yards against the Browns. But he gets Cincinnati this week, who's been not only one of the worst teams in the NFL, but one of the worst defenses in the NFL. It's a week-to-week game. It's going to take some strength. Are you strong enough to say, yes, Montgomery is a slam dunk start in my FFPC lineups this week, even after he puts up a bad, really bad week against the Browns in week 4?
Yeah, he's starting in every lineup for me this week. And I will tell you, I sat him in a couple last week because of that matchup against the Browns. There were some where I had to start him. I really didn't have much of a choice. But after watching that Browns defense the first 2 weeks, I'm like, I started Jahmyr Gibbs wherever I had him. I think you have to. He's, a top 5 draft pick. But I did sit David Montgomery in a couple leagues. But yeah, this week he's going right back in, and I'm sure he gets right back to what his normal numbers are against a bad Cincinnati team.
That gives me hope, Ferrell. I'm excited to start David Montgomery this week now.
Well, buddy, I think you should be, and I think that's good analysis. And I have a follow-up question about what's going on with Cleveland this weekend. Give me a rundown on what you expect from that Vikings-Cleveland game. Who else would you left Montgomery on the bench, so who would you leave on the bench from the Vikings roster?
From the Vikings?
Yes.
Let me.
I would, if I'm probably the only 2 guys I would start would be Jefferson and Addison. Unless I was forced to start Mason, isn't it the same thing against him? And I love Carson Wentz, but are they scared of Carson Wentz to where they're, going to have trouble defending the run against them? I don't have any Jordan Mason, so it's an easy decision for me to make, I guess. But yeah, if I had other similar options, I'm sitting. I think probably for the foreseeable future, most running backs against the Browns this year.
Okay,
that defense is scary good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, go Balky.
Go. Okay. So, Jason, let me ask you this. I have Mason on a few teams, and I do plan on starting him Sunday morning. But let's do a would you rather for people who may have other choices other than Jordan Mason, who drafted better than me, that do have better choices. No, come on. Would you rather start Jordan Mason in London against the Browns or the aforementioned Rachaad White in Seattle?
Rachaad White.
Jordan Mason at London against the Browns or Woody Marks in Baltimore?
Oh, that's easy, JC.
Not easy, Ferrell.
It's easy.
Not easy.
Ferrell's probably going to say Woody Marks, right?
Yeah.
No? Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sold. I know where we're going with this. Woody Marks scares the hell out of me. I don't know what to make of that performance last week. They've been talking about him. He's buried on the depth chart. He's not going to be anything this year. We went out and got Nick Chubb for a reason, and now all of a sudden we're supposed to buy into what happened last week. I ride the hot hand, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I would probably be like one hand over one eye, choosing who I'm like, which one, So But if Ferrell says to start Woody Marks, I'm saying Woody Marks.
Well, not only Jason, not only Ferrell saying that, but Permar 99, Adam Hahn, Jimmy Williams, all saying Woody Marks here.
They can't all be wrong, right?
Well, they could all be wrong. That's the thing. That's why we do the show, because they might all be wrong, but they might all be right. Jordan Mason or J.K. Dobbins in Philly against that Eagles defense?
J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah. Dobbins, you're saying. Tony Pollard, who and Ferrell, my apologies, and Jason, my apologies. I don't think Tyjae Spears has been activated for this game yet. Maybe he hasn't been. But Jordan Mason or Tony Pollard at Arizona.
I'll go Tony Pollard, actually.
Okay, you're saying Pollard. Now here's a fun one, and we're gonna end it on this one.
All right.
Jordan Mason in London against the Browns, or at home against the Detroit Lions, former first round / second round pick Chase Brown. Chase Brown or Jordan Mason?
Good one, Buck.
Oh, Mason.
Oh,
Mason.
we got one.
Without hesitation, it's Mason over Brown.
Chase Brown. I faded Chase Brown everywhere this year.
Through with those Cincinnati Bengals.
I didn't believe in him last year. I was completely shocked by what he did last year. And I just was like, he can't repeat that this year. So I am so low on Chase Brown.
I was coming with Mason or O.J. Simpson just to get in. You could get in. Okay. Joe Mixon and Woody Marks. Let's talk about this. Woody Marks was a player that I really targeted in Dynasty, and I was glad I did. And I bought into some of that conversation that we had early on in the year on a couple of the Dynasty shows. A couple of my Dynasty teams, I released Woody just because, I thought, well, I'm carrying him on too many teams. I really like the way this player moves. I like his build. He's 5'10", 210 pounds. He looks like classic running back, and I think he's going to continue to do well. But I also have, in your terminology, and a lot of fantasy players' terminology, a lot of shares of Joe Mixon. What do you do if you're in that situation that I'm in?
So I have a little bit of Mixon, and every time I look at him sitting on one of my benches, I'm like, why do I still have him rostered? But I guess there's some little piece of me that's hopeful that he comes in handy somewhere down the road. He's just taking up a roster spot on, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 of my teams, something like that. And I don't have much hope for him, but I haven't found any reason to have to cut him yet because none of those teams have been in that bad a shape where I really need that spot. I picked up Chubb in a couple leagues here and there. And he's been serviceable, so far. He's nothing great, but as like that third flex or second flex, whatever you want to call it, he's been okay. I just overall don't know what has happened to the Texans in the past 2 years. I know everybody was so high on them last year, and C.J. Stroud was the next Patrick Mahomes, and that offense was going to be, the next big offense in the NFL, and they're just not. So all of these guys scare me. Woody Marks scare me. I even look at Nico Collins, and I'm like, I know I'm starting him in every league that I have him in, but I don't feel great about having drafted him at 10, 11, 12, 13 and being forced to play him because they just feel like not the same team that I was expecting the past 2 years. So, I'm scared of Marks. I'm scared of Chubb. I'm scared of Mixon. I'm going to hold on to Mixon as long as I can and hope that something happens, but I don't have a lot of faith in that team just in general.
Let me tell you about another player that kind of scares me, and I don't own him in a lot of spots, Jason, but Dalton Kincaid I do have in a few, and Kincaid was awesome in week 3. You think about that Thursday night game that he had, catching the touchdown, 6 catches, 80-plus yards, probably should have scored a second touchdown that week as well, and then you fast forward to week 4. You're expecting big things. You're hoping that he is a strong start at tight end. He sees 2 targets, catches one of them, granted for a touchdown, which kind of saved his bacon this week. And now he's back on primetime against the Patriots. What's your level of confidence in a tight end premium league like the FFPC in starting one Dalton Kincaid in week 5?
Pretty low. I love Dalton Kincaid. I'm a big fan and I had a lot of him last year, and I know last year was a lot of injuries. But I have a pretty significant amount of him this year too. He's probably on the bench in most leagues where I have a better option or a similar option, I guess. I know I'm starting Hunter Henry over him this week. And I think right now I have Theo Johnson in a couple lineups over him. I don't know that that's the smartest move in the world, but Jackson Dart's got to throw the ball to somebody. That could change by Sunday. I might go back to Kincaid, but that's where I kind of have him ranked this week. It's like he could go for 2 catches for 16 yards, or he could catch a touchdown. And I know the Patriots had a little trouble with Tommy Tremble against the Panthers, but outside of that, they've been, I think, okay against the tight end this year. So was that a one-off? And was that just a Bryce Young loves Tommy Tremble thing last week? I don't know. So yeah, I'm afraid of him. I love having him on my roster because I am waiting for that moment when that connection really becomes a consistent one in Buffalo. And he was a guy that you were getting 11, 12, 13, 14th round this year. At least I was in most drafts. I wasn't taking him before 10. I know that. So when he did go early, I was happy to not have drafted him. When he sat there that long, I took him. Same thing with Kyle Pitts. So those are the two guys. I've been, everybody's been waiting on those guys. And there were a lot of leagues I have a few leagues, I think, where I have both those guys where I took them back-to-back 13, 14 kind of stuff.
That's
Jason, have you in the FFPC, have you been sort of a distressed asset buyer when it comes to tight ends, given that you do have a lot of Kincaid and Pitts?
Yes. Yeah. I was not, I didn't go after any Bowers this year. No McBride. I don't even think I have any Kittle. It's I was really waiting like I said, I have some Ingram, and he was a guy that I was getting a little bit, in those late single-digit rounds. But I kind of had my eye on guys like Kincaid, Pitts, Brenton Strange, and then what's that?
Tucker Kraft.
I have no Tucker Kraft, and I'm disappointed that I don't. But
just broke Balky's heart, brother.
I stayed away from Green Bay just overall. I don't think I have some Matthew Golden, but I don't have anything else there. But yeah, tight end. This was a year where I was waiting because I've always been a big believer that those guys get overvalued after big years. I was a big Gronk owner early in his career when he was cheap. Same with Kelsey. But when they started sneaking into first, second, third round, I was like, I can't stomach that when there are other guys out there.
At that point, Jason, you're looking for the next Gronk.
Right. Absolutely.
That you can
remember
get
those
after 8 or 9 tight ends are off the board, then you start looking for the next guy.
Yeah.
Remember those magic days when Hernandez was going in front of Gronk?
Yes.
How sweet it was,
Yes.
How great it worked one year. Hey, let's talk about New York. Losing Neighbors is the one that hurts, and I don't have him rostered anywhere, but I love watching this guy play football.
Yeah.
And the catches he could make, it's just like each week he surprises me with the level of difficulty, man, how he makes the really tough stuff look easy. Now, from a fantasy perspective, what's going to happen in New York, the ball gets distributed around. Darius Slayton becomes relevant. Perhaps we get you talk about a late tight end. Maybe Theo Johnson does something. But am I right to say that the opportunity for the 25-point plus game with Jackson Dart goes away without Neighbors there?
I think he's going to be highly dependent on some rushing yardage and rushing touchdowns if he's going to get to those 18 to 25-point games. I think it hurts. I watched a lot of that game last week. I don't know if y'all did, but I was encouraged by watching his ability to get out and run and not be afraid. I don't necessarily love that he was trying to stiff arm guys and go first into linebackers and things like that because we want to keep them healthy. But Certainly losing Malik Neighbors is hurts him badly, but they throw a lot of those short things to Wan'Dale Robinson. Slayton's a good receiver that just I don't know. Has he just not had the quarterback play? Has that been the issue there? Maybe that maybe this is the guy that unlocks him a little bit. So I don't. Most of my Jackson Dart shares are on teams that already have really good quarterbacks. I am forced into him, and I think in the league that we've been kind of focusing on this week because of losing Lamar and then Jordan Love being on bye. I don't feel great about starting him, but I'm not afraid to start him, and I think I might have him starting in like one or two other leagues here and there, and out of necessity. And my hope for him is more, 6 weeks down the road. Maybe he's somebody that makes you make a decision. But for the most part, if you're starting Jackson Dart, it's because you've been forced to, and not something that you want to do at this point.
And his effect, who does he affect? I guess outside of Slayton, do you see anybody else as a beneficiary of the new lineup without Nate?
I would guess Theo maybe, because does that become the security blanket? Like I think the one encouraging thing too that it is. So I was not high on Cam Scatteraboo, but he's been a lot better than I thought, and maybe having that running threat helps Jackson Dart a little bit. Maybe they run some option stuff. Maybe they get him out moving around this, the corner and stuff like that. So I think that gives me a little bit more encouragement that they have a decent running game that can protect him a little bit, where, some of the other teams with younger quarterbacks may not have that.
In my son's Yahoo league with his buddies, we go over his league every day, and a player that we've had rostered since the start of the season. So 12-team, a half PPR league. My son says to me as I'm making him breakfast before he goes to school today, Jason, he says to me, "Dad, who is W. Robinson?" And I said, he is Wan'Dale Robinson. He is a PPR scam for FFPC right now. And I'm hoping that he's the number one receiver for Jackson Dart here going forward with no Malik Neighbors. But I can't guarantee that.
Yeah.
Slayton is a possibility. Theo Johnson, I'm glad you brought that up. Steven Urgalos, the fantasy soprano, is a big fan of Theo Johnson. I'll say this too, Jason. Consider
and Balky, you have now exposed yourself and called yourself out for poor parenting. Any child who doesn't know who Wan'Dale Robinson is I am shocked.
I will say this: if anybody who has been normally watching or listening to the show, I'm a bad parent. I am not a good father when it comes to fantasy football. And so this is surprising nobody right now. And I'll say this, Jason, in regards to Jackson Dart starting this week, from a guy who has a ton of Lamar Jackson, of Brock Purdy, of Jordan Love, of Caleb Williams, I am scraping. I'm taking that little, whatever it is, that metallic instrument, and I'm jumping down into the bottom of the barrel, whatever that instrument is that Keanu Reeves in The Replacements was using to scrape barnacles off those yachts. Yeah. I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel, trying to find a blanking quarterback right now. Yeah. And I Jackson Dart I couldn't afford, or he was already rostered. I'm going with players like Sam Darnold and Geno Smith. And I'm going to tell you what right now, man, you say, I understand if you got to start Jackson Dart this week. I would love to start Jackson Dart this week in some of those leagues. So It is, man. It is what it is. We are way over time, and Ferrell has one final question for you tonight, Jason.
I do?
Yes.
I have so many questions for you on call. Okay. We've got a lot of top draft picks, and they're all, not all, but many of them are sitting on the sideline. And then we talked about our running back, Chase Brown, and there's an example of a higher rated player that we're not excited about playing. Give me another one. Tell me somebody that we might consider setting this week. And then I love what you had to tell us about Montgomery, so you can't use him, but tell us a player that you should be starting. Tell us who is the other weekend scoring contributor not named Jack Tungus.
Yeah, but that would have been my one because I did start him in a few last night. If we would have had that question yesterday, I started him in a guillotine last night, and so happy that I did. The early round pick that worries me the most, and that I guess you can make an argument for sitting, is BTJ. I mean, he has just been that Jacksonville offense is just not the same, and I was a bit afraid of him. I drafted him a little bit here and there, but so much of his success last year was with Mac Jones that I was a little worried that something like this might happen. I didn't think it'd be quite this bad. So there are leagues where I'm looking at him, and if I have, comparable options, I could maybe make that choice. I haven't yet. I just looked over him earlier tonight, and I still have him starting in every league. But I think he's one of those. Chase Brown would be the other, as we talked about, if he was a first rounder. But outside of that, I feel like most of the first round picks this year are kind of living up to their billing. If I'm looking at some surprise guys for the weekend, I think I'm looking at that Giants Saints game, and it's Kendry Miller, and it's like Slayton or Theo Johnson. I can see that being an offensive game. And like if I'm in really desperation with quarterback, let me go get Spencer Rattler if I really have to, and maybe that game turns into a shootout. I don't love any of those. I don't see like a really bright sleeper this week, but that's kind of, when I looked at it this week, that's who I see as some guys that maybe there that could have some big games.
The season is still young, but we're at the 3/4 pole, as it were. I don't want to say quarter pole, because people like Ferrell, who are a big fan of the Kentucky Derby, will say, Balky, it's not the quarter pole, it's the 3/4 pole. The quarter pole comes at 75% of the season, and quite frankly, after 75% of the season is over, this guy Jason Coe is hoping to find himself near the top of the leaderboard in the FFPC Big Gorilla for $1 million grand prize. Jason, a lot of good insight from you tonight. A lot of entertaining stuff. I didn't think we'd get into tonight, but it's always good when we bring on somebody as intelligent as you and somebody who is chasing that 7-figure grand prize in the FFPC Big Gorilla. Don't be a stranger. Thanks so much for hanging out this week. Enjoy week 5. And for God's sake, get your lineups in early. This is a message for everybody this week. 9 a.m. kickoff in London for the Vikings and Browns. Don't get Jalen Warren this week like so many of you were last week.
Yeah.
I know Jason Coe won't, and hopefully none of you will either. Jason, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. This was a lot of fun. Good luck this weekend going forward.
Appreciate it. I enjoyed it. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Ferrell. You guys have a great night.
You do the same. That's Jason Coe, ladies and gentlemen, the week 3 5th place team owner in the FFPC Big Gorilla tournament. So good to be talking to him tonight, Ferrell. And with that, I mean, like, we are way over time here. I'd love to. Do you want to go rapid fire on these starts?
If you want, Balky, whatever you want to do. You are running the show, brother.
All right, let's do rapid fire on this.
Okay.
Alec Iamaner or Cooper Kupp this week? Who would you rather start? This is simply just start sits, not who you'd rather roster, but start sits in week 5 alone. Who would you rather start this week? Alec Iamaner at the Cardinals, Cooper Kupp at home against the Bucks.
Alec's the easy play. Kupp will have a game, but I'm not willing to say it's this weekend. Let's go with Alec.
I'm with you. Derek Brown from Fantasy Pros was talking up Cooper Kupp this week. I don't know necessarily if I'm buying in week 5. Iamaner looks like the number 1 receiver for Tennessee, so give me him. Let's shift over to tight ends here. TJ Hawkinson, the Vikings tight end. Would you rather play him this week, Ferrell, or would you rather play Harold Fannin? These guys are going against each other at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time in London.
I have a soft spot for Fannin, but not with the rookie quarterback. Let's stay with Hawkinson.
I'm going to go with Fannin this week. Fannin is a guy that is probably the de facto slot receiver for Cleveland and Minnesota's defense. If you want to beat them, you can beat them at the slot position this week. So that's why I think I'm going to play Fannin over Hawkinson. Baker Mayfield or Dak Prescott this week, Ferrell. Baker Mayfield going up against the Seattle Seahawks. They got to travel across 3 time zones to take on the Seahawks. Or you could have one Dak Prescott who is in New York against the Jets.
Dak Prescott is the player you drafted. You couldn't have Mayfield and Prescott on the same team, but if you do, I think I'm going to lean towards Prescott in this.
You certainly could have him on the same team.
Oh, no, I don't think you would.
Especially in a salary cap league, you could have bought.
Well, I don't know yet.
I will agree with
the main event.
I know it's tempting to not go with the player who crushed it last week in Prescott because it's a week-to-week league, but I still think Prescott is the smarter start over Mayfield this week. And the final one I'll bring up, and we talked about Chase Brown earlier, Ferrell, I'm going to bring him up again. Would you rather start in week 5 in the year of our Lord? Would you rather play Chase Brown this week against the Detroit Lions at home or Tony Pollard? And we might even answer this question earlier tonight with Jason.
JC did.
Tony Pollard at Arizona or Chase Brown at home against the Lions?
As a tip of the cap to our beloved friend Dave Turp, let's put Tony Pollard out there.
Tony Pollard is the play over Chase Brown. I'm a weak man. I'm still going to play Chase Brown. But listen, man, I'm going down with the ship. I am the captain of the Cincinnati Bengals cruise ship that was looking like it was going to be great. We're sipping Mai Tais in the Bahamas. We're hanging out in the in the Caribbean, drinking all the spiced rum, all these great drinks. We're having crab. We're having seafood. We're loving life. I'm going down with that ship. So I'm going to play Chase Brown over
Good for you,
this week. Thank you. Ferrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, he is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. Check him out, kffsc.com. Ferrell, be good. Enjoy this weekend, and we will talk with you again next Friday, my friend, and hopefully week 5 goes good for you.
We'll see you then, Bucky. Thank you.
You got it. Absolutely. Ferrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, hanging out on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. That is going to complete our show. I want to thank Ferrell Elliott. I want to thank Jason Coe, the FFPC, Rob, our audio engineer, Bryce, our producer, and, of course, each and every one of you for listening, watching, streaming, downloading this podcast. I want to let you know what's going on next week with the FFPC family of podcasts. Next week, this show will go live at 10 p.m. Eastern time with Week 4 Big Gorilla 4th place team owners Greg and Matthew Salter. Greg and Matthew Salter, a father and son duo, and they both join us next Friday night at 10 p.m. That's going to be fun. In case you missed it, the 8-time FFPC League champ Ted Rokas was my guest on the road of his High Stakes Lowdown this past Tuesday. And Troy's Boys, the franchise owner himself, Larry Weinhauer, will rejoin me, I should say, on the road of his High Stakes Lowdown this coming Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern time. In case you missed FFPC Insider Access last night, Thursday, leading up until that 49ers-Rams game. It's actually a great show. We basically hang out for like an hour 15, and then we are your 2-screen experience hanging out, watching the Thursday night game with you. Last night it was Dynasty League Football's John Arrington, who was a blast to hang out with. A lot of fun stuff from him, from both Dynasty and redraft standpoint. He is a big Devy guy as well, so if there's any Devy fans out there, watch that back. That was a fun show, and we will be back. You want to talk about fun shows? Next Thursday, it is the Eagles, it is the Giants on Thursday Night Football, and we have renowned Philadelphia Eagles fan Brian Drake from Fantasy Points that's going to be co-hosting the show with me for 2 full hours next Thursday. That's going to be a lot of fun on the FFPC socials, as well as the Better Sports Network and the FFPC YouTube channel as well. FFPC Weekly Challenge is live. No draft, no salary cap. Just pick 10 or 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses. Win up to $2,500, 10, 30, and 100-team contests available. 1 player per NFL team. If you want Jalen Hurts, you can't have Saquon Barkley. If you want Jackson Dart, you can't have Theo Johnson. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. This show, 10 p.m. next Friday. The FFPC Insider Access show, 7 p.m. next Thursday. The RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, 10 p.m. Eastern time this coming Tuesday. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. For Ferrell Elliott, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. We will talk with you again next Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.